Okay, so solo lane. For solo, as a general rule, you're gonna start. People start either at the wave or at the blue buff. I feel like almost always it's better to start blue. Because, not for you as a solo laner, because let's say you have your two waves. Amazing drawing, I know. Like that. Two waves are fighting. You are at your blue buff. The enemy is at their blue buff. What your jungler will do, and this is the main reason why I think blue start is better. I'll put it in green. So your jungler is gonna start his speed buff with the mid laner, and then he's gonna go straight to your blue buff, and then he's gonna go back camps, hog the back camps, and go to middle. And if, let's say, for comparison's sake, your enemy solo laner is starting wave, I'll put them in. What other color can I use? Whatever. I'll just use green again for the junglers. So the enemy jungler will start speed, just like your jungler, but he will go back camps, and then he will go blue buff, and then he will go mid. And this route takes like roughly 5 seconds longer because you're walking almost past your. Well, you're taking inefficient routes basically because you're walking to your backs, and then you're walking to mid instead of walking blue backs mid. And you as a solo laner have already started your blue buff, whereas the Chaos side team hasn't started their blue buff yet, so it will take a little longer to clear. This means that your jungler will get to mid quicker, and then he will get mid pressure, like I said last week. And then with mid pressure, you can do things like invade red buff, get the neutral farm like mid camps, oracles, things like that. And you will get a lead in your jungle because you started blue buff. And as a general rule, I think the time of the jungler is the most important time of anyone on the map, because they need to be at all their camps and they can impact the map the most out of any wall, I would say. So you will, in this scenario where you as blue start on your blue buff and the red side team starts with the solo laner in lane, you will lose pressure and you will lose some minions to tower, but this means your jungler will get ahead, which I think is a valuable trade-off and it's worth it. So that's why I think you should start blue buff. The only time you don't want to start blue buff is when you have a really early game solo laner and you want to just start pushing your leads immediately. But in general, those are not really meta right now, and you mainly play for team fights, or at least mid-game. In terms of what you want to start with as build, I like going with a Chalice. So you get a Warrior's Blessing 800 gold, Chalice 300 gold, and then some pots, which means you have some gold left over. But if you start with, let's say, Boots 1 and 4 pots and Warrior's Blessing, and you spend all your gold, and you only get some movement speed for the extra gold, and you don't have Chalice, so you don't have as much sustain. Which means that as the person who started Chalice, it's easy to poke the other person out and regain. Well, you don't really lose any gold because the main point of the Chalice is that you're gonna use it a lot, and it's just free because it keeps refilling itself every time you back. So you put yourself 300 gold behind in your build, which should be easily accounted for by out sustaining the enemy solo laner while fighting. You can also start with if you're against a physical solo laner as a physical, you start with tier 1 shield a lot. which is the shield that builds into Berserker Shield, Glad Shield, Void Shield, and Shifters. Which gives you some protections and some power, but even then I think the Chalice is more value over time, over the course of the laning phase in solo. Another thing to keep in mind, if you are both starting blue buff, and you do your blue, you want to lane. If any one minion of you has died, you are not gonna hit level 2. So this is something you need to keep into account. If you see any one of your minions has died and the enemy still has, or your... Wait, I'm explaining this in a very difficult way. So you need to get XP off all 6 minions in lane if you start blue buff to hit level 2 over the first wave. So if you see any of the enemy minions has died already, that means that you will not hit level 2 of that wave. So if you see that you are order side in this scenario, so if you see any chaos side minion has died, let's say 1 minion died, you know none of your minions, or you know you will not hit level 2. But if you see none of your minions have died yet, and the enemy solo laner gets there at roughly the same time you do, that means he will hit level 2, and you need to be prepared for that, so you don't get outpoked at wave 1 because you weren't ready for him hitting level 2. And almost any god is gonna win level 2 versus level 1. As a start, mainly you do blue, you do wave. If you get pressure, you can start a totem. What I like to do is, if I don't have that much wave clear, but I still out clear, is just hit a totem a bit already. So it's easier for you to kill next time, and then just go to wave, clear the wave, and then kill the totem completely. So in that scenario, you don't lose wave pressure. Whereas if you do blue, wave, totem, and then you go back to lane late, because the enemy is already clearing your wave, then you're gonna lose pressure wave 2. And you might lose some minions to tower, or at least to gold. And then it's easy for them to start clearing your wave at... So they would be standing like over here, and you would be like under your tower. And it would be very easy for the enemy solo laner to start clearing your wave as soon as it hits like this, like over here. And they just easily outclear you in that scenario, because you have to wait all the way for their minions to push up while they can already start clearing it. So that's just an easy way to lose pressure, and regaining pressure, especially early game, is very difficult. So you want to always try to focus on the wave, and then whenever you don't have anything to do, you can do whatever you want. You can do the totem, do your blue buff if it's up, maybe do the back camp, maybe even proxy if you know it's safe, which I will go over later. So try to keep pressure when you have it, and get as much out of it. I would say the highest priority after doing wave would be the blue buff. First of all, whenever it's up, you want to do your blue, you want to get the blue buff, get the mana, get the cooldown. Also, another thing to keep in mind, the blue buff is not just that it gives you more mana, but the mana, well, it does, but the mana is not only used for clearing the wave, but you also use the mana to outpoke your opponent. So if you have blue buff and they don't, it's very easy for you to outtrade them, because you can just use your abilities way more freely. And they have to use them on the wave, because if they use them too much on you, they're gonna run out of mana and then they can't clear the wave anymore. So first of all, you want to do your blue as highest priority. Then you want to do totem. After that, you are most likely looking to rotate if it's not too early. Sometimes you can split this, not really that often. what you can do is look for an invade on their back camps. Maybe what I like to do in ADC, and you can also do this in solo. If all my farm is up in ADC, so it would be like this is done, this is done, this is done, and I know they are like over here clearing their purple. I just run over to them and I go annoy them, and maybe they drop it, maybe I steal it, maybe I just delay it, but I have nothing to lose because none of my farm is up. And you can do the exact same thing in solo. So if your blue is down, totem is down, and you know they are like at their blue buff, you can just go and annoy them. And even if you don't steal it, but you just make them reset it and lose a few seconds, that's just a little advantage you gained because you had nothing to do anyway, and it's still better than just sitting in lane. Chalice also has the advantage of not counting to your healing potion limit, so that you can basically start with busting on 6 healing potions. It doesn't... If you mean in the item slot, then you are correct, but keep in mind that you can't stack them anymore like you used to. When was it? Last season, I think, where you could just pop the Chalice and a health potion and they would both tick, so you can't do that anymore. Also, another thing to keep in mind when you're buying Chalice is that you want to get value of it over time because it's 3 potions for the price of 6 at the beginning. But the value comes from using Chalice a lot and getting 3 health potions each time you back. But if you are gonna sell it early because you want to get wards and, I don't know, multis, or maybe you want to get a sentry ward and a regular ward, then you're not really... No, it wasn't a good decision to buy the Chalice. Got to dip. Oh, I see a Mystic. So what was I saying? Chalice. Already said that. God damn it, now I really forgot where I was going. Whatever. Oh yeah, annoy the opponent when you have nothing to do anyway, because you're not losing any farm. Like, if your blue was up and you're gonna annoy them, then you're just losing your own farm. But if your blue is down, if the totem is down, then you might as well just go annoy them. Maybe you get lucky, maybe you steal it. Worst case scenario, you just delay it and be annoying until your opponent can win that way. For builds, like I said, you want to start either with the Chalice or with boots, or maybe the shield. If you're against the physical, maybe tier 1, what's it called, runic shield, if you're against the magical. But you have a lot of options in solo lane as to what to build. Oh yeah, you also want to counter build. Like, the first, obviously you're getting boots, and then the first item is going to be probably a defense item against whatever you're laning against, either magical or physical. Against physical, you can get the attack speed shield. I think it's Berserkers. Yeah, it's Berserkers. On gods like Amaterasu. If you are not against, if you're not Amaterasu Water, you could get Soul Eater on some gods. Wukong is really in the meta right now, and he utilizes it really well. There are some other gods who can use it. If you are playing against a magical, I think Runic Shield is really good just because the magic power it reduces is really valuable early game. You could also get Void Shield, but the passive is percent pen, so keep in mind that early game they're only gonna have like, 50 protection, so it's only gonna reduce 5. Late game it's gonna be a lot more valuable when they have like 200 protections, and it's gonna reduce 20. Also, the Sledge, if you're basically any physical, if you're playing a warrior, even if you're playing an assassin, Sledge in solo is so good, it gives so much health. So I would say almost basically that's like one of the only items you would buy every game. As other items you can build. So after your first item, your second item will most likely be physical defense, just because the enemy jungler is like 90% of your games are going to be against a warrior in solo and an assassin in jungle. Let's do physicals. You're almost never going to see the mid laner. You're almost never going to see the support. You're definitely never going to see the solo laner. See the ADC or other. I should stop reading chat while I'm talking. So you want to get physical defense for those two. If you have a magical solo laner against you and a physical assassin or a warrior, you want to get a magical defense item first, because you always want to counter build who you see the most first, because they have the highest priority. So in solo lane, it's always going to be your lane opponent. After that, so if you're against a magical, you start with a magical defense item, and then if you're against an assassin in jungle, you're gonna either build a hybrid item. I like going Sledge because the health also makes your protections more valuable in a way. And it just gives good power, it gives good everything, basically. It also gives some magical protections with passive, and some physical. Other things you can build is Stone of Gaia, can be really good. I think it used to be built like almost every game, and now it's not built as much anymore. I think it's still really strong just because it gives passive sustain all the time. And if you get knocked up or pulled or knockbacked, then it gives the passive, which is insanely sustain. But even without that, you're gonna get a lot of value, and almost every team comp is gonna have some form of knock up or pull or something like that, where you just can activate it and get value off it in team fights. Another thing you can, obviously you want anti-healing in certain situations. I like building things like Divine Ruin and Brawler's Beatstick over a Pestilence, because the effect of Divine Ruin and Brawler's Beatstick will last for 8 seconds regardless. Whereas for a Pestilence to apply, you always have to be near them. And the second you are not close enough anymore, the effect stops applying. But Brawler's Beatstick, you just hit them once and they are anti-healed for 8 seconds, regardless of what you do afterwards. Another item I think is valuable on some gods is Pridwen. Pridwen gives you a shield and protects you when you ult, or technically after your ult stops channeling. So I don't have a good example right now, but let's say Anubis builds Pridwen, please don't. But you don't get the shield at the start of the ult, but you get it at the end, always. It can be good on some gods who wanna dive. I kinda like it on Osiris, because you ult in a lot. And then you just even tankier, even scarier. You use Thorns, and everybody has to run away from you. As magical, if you want to play a Guardian, I think Stone of Binding is really good, because every god has CC that procs it, and it gives 10 protection shred for both physical and magical protections. So this means if they have, let's say, 50 protections early game against you, you're gonna reduce 20% of their protection just by applying the Stone of Binding effect. You're gonna deal a lot of extra damage with it. It also gives some protection, but not that much. And it gives some power as well. Have you talked about the fundamental rock, paper, scissors of solo lane? I'm not sure what you mean by that, to be honest. Do you mean like the god matchups of sustain, poke, burst? Or Because that's something I should mention. If it's not, then I'm not sure what you mean. Counter supports rotating solo lane. I mean, he can, but he doesn't do that often. It's a shame at love because I was about to answer his question. Oh yeah, what Pyro said is something I should mention. So you have 3. It's kind of what I said with the burst sustain poke, but in a different way. So 3 categories: stall, clear, bully, as Pyrus calls them. Bully would be an Osiris, like I said, because his wave clear is decent with his cleave auto attacks. It's not that great, but where did I say Hades? I might have said Hades. I meant Osiris. Where Osiris really excels is poking out the other player and then just not allowing you to clear the wave. You also have clear gods who just wanna, clear the wave. And there's not much you can do against them because they're just gonna clear it so quickly. And if you wanna fight in the wave, especially early game, if you fight in the wave, you're just gonna never win the fight against anyone because you're gonna take so much damage from the minions and the enemy gods, while the enemy would already clear the wave, so he doesn't have to fight the minions and you, he's just fighting you. It's kind of like a 2v1, 3v1 almost even, because the minions early game just deal so much damage. Also, if you wanna fight in the wave, keep in mind that archers deal almost 2.5 times the damage of melee minions, I think. So archers always have highest priority of clearing. And they also are cleared easier, which is another reason why I should clear them, because they have less health. And you can't run away from the archers because they are ranged, and whereas the melee minions, you just run away from them and then they can't attack you. So always try to clear archers first if you can. Also, another thing with the archers is if your waves are clashing and you kill the archers, it's also gonna be more difficult for the enemy to clear because he doesn't have the archers helping him anymore, which is the majority of the damage. So in a way, you're also slowing down their wave clear by clearing their archers first, whereas melee minions take a lot more effort and they do less damage. So for the triangle, actually, can I get a new... Oh, I can. You're all gonna see my drawing skills. Boom, triangle. Actually, I'll do it in circles. Wow. I know, I should be an artist. This is brilliant. So you would have, what did you call them? Stall. Did you do SD? I'll do them in black, whatever. SD, stall. And you have bully and clear. Bully and clear. So I would say it depends on how you define it. But I would say somebody who clears is always gonna beat the bully, because the clearer is gonna kill the wave and then he's gonna fight in the wave and there's not much you can do against it. The staller, wait, I have to think about this because Pyrus, can you explain to me how you define these walls? Because I feel like I use different terms and I am not sure how you would define these. I will, because I know your point, I understand your point, but I don't know how to explain it, if that makes sense. I'll just keep going with what I was going to say until I get the explanation from Pyros. So what I was explaining was builds, because I'm kind of all over the place. Obviously build the protections of whoever you're against. Build Stun of Binding if you're a magical is really good. Build Prudent if you ult a lot. Build Anti-Heal if they have heal. Those are all basic concepts. Another item I really value, especially late game, is Spirit Robe. Because Spirit Robe gives mitigation. And mitigation is a completely different stat from protections. So if you take 1000 damage, or let's say you take, let's take 1000 damage just for some easy maths, and your protections reduce it by half, so you would only take 500 damage still at that point. But then you also still have your mitigation, so Spirit Robe would give another 10%. And that 10% means you would only take 450 damage. It's not that good with an ult, like 1000 damage, like a Kraken would do or something like that. But if you're taking a lot of smaller hits, it's gonna stack up over time. And since you're already really tanky as a solo laner, the extra layer of protections, that is mitigations, is just gonna make you very tanky. So Bully keeps poking the clear, ruining his clear. Clear beats a solid because he can proxy farm easy peasy. Solid beats at range, ruining the point of being a bully. So that's the thing, right? Because I would define them otherwise. Because the way I envision solo lane in my mind is that as a clear god, you would fight in the wave against the bully. You can't do this if your clear is like mediocre, because then you would get killed before you clear the wave. But if you have a good clear, you would clear the wave before him, and then you can turn on the bully in the wave. Because then he can't fight you, because you have minions fighting him as well, helping you win the fight. I get your point, but it's like there's not really any real definition for it, so it's kind of hard to explain. The bully is basically the tank. He don't care about the minions. He usually has the 20 magical damage dealing. You mean... God, why can't I think of... Oh my god. Dude, why can't I think of the name right now? What is wrong with me? Mystical Male, thank you. Oh my god. Can't believe I blanked on that name. It's also 40 AoE, by the way. I think. Isn't it? Yeah. It was at least. Also, 40 I think is 20. It's 20 because it gets mitigated by magical protections. So it's 40 flat. But once you factor in protections and everything else, it's gonna be around 20. Especially later in the game, it's not gonna do that much. Mystical Mail is also another item I should have mentioned, but somehow I forgot to put on my list. I think Mystical Mail is valuable because, especially early game, it's valuable because it gives physical protection, which is what you would only build against warriors, by the way, or assassins, I guess. But you do get some physical protection from it. You do get health, if I remember correctly, although I'm not sure on that. And you get the aura, which is every second it deals 40 magical damage in 55 units, if I'm not mistaken. Something like that. It's an AoE around you that does magical damage over time, basically. And the point of getting Mystical Mail is that you are poking the enemy, and they are poking you, so you're just having a slap fight in solo like you do. But you get 40 damage, which is roughly 30 early game, if you factor in mitigations. So you do 30 damage every second for free while you're near him. And that just helps you win a lot of fights that you otherwise wouldn't have won. And bullying out the enemy just allows you to get more clear, get more space in lane, and get more farm that way compared to him. Alright, let me read Pyro's entire book he wrote on Bully Clear. Or was it Bully Clear Stall? So bullies are characters that want to fight on the minion wave because they can fight 1v1 pretty well. These are your Bellonas, your Osiris's, your Kukulans. You get the idea. They want to fight 24/7 because these guys have a very good early game and mid game, but not that good of a late game. They want to snowball as much as possible. Clearers are characters that want to clear as quickly as possible. As quickly as possible, so they can go somewhere else. Hades, Amaterasu, and Wukong are great examples of this. They have a good late game, but the early game is so bad that they prefer to avoid fighting early game unless they have a kill chance. Stallers are characters that rarely show up in solo lane due to the fact that they usually don't come online for a long time. But they come with an extra benefit. They have a very powerful late game. Terra, Fafnir, and Surbik are great examples. Yeah, so the way Pyros describes it is not really how I would describe it, but I still have my perfect triangle. So the way Pyros would describe it is the buller beats, I would say win, I'm gonna put it in green. So you win against the cleaver because you bully him out, right? Yeah. You win against the staller because you clear, and you win against him. I think that's how Pyro means it. Bullies tend to bully out clearers so they can't clear the wave. Clearers often clear the waves too quickly for stallers to stall. And stallers usually interrupt bullies too often to get bullied out. So yeah. See, that's the thing, right? I would define clearers as god with good early game clear. Because that way you get more freedom to do in lane what you want, and you would, in my example, if you have good early game clear, you would beat the bullies because you out clear and then you win the fight. Well, they can't fight you because you have the minion wave fighting with you, so you kind of negate the bully's strength in that sense. So it's kind of a different way of thinking about it, I guess. What does Aphro do? Because she has good clear and can AFK. I guess Aphro would be clear. Because you need to be in lane, especially early game. Staller 100%. Am I an idiot? I don't know what I'm talking about, I guess. Usually happens in mid game when it's easy to clear a wave for low level. When it's easy to clear a wave, this is for the low levels where a snowball tend to form due to this triangle. Yeah. I would say we're both right. I mean, we are both right. It's just a fact, I think. Because if you outclear them early, then they can't fight you. But if your clear doesn't... If you don't have great clear the first few levels, then you're just going to get bullied out by the bullies. Because it's going to take too long to clear. It's however you play the god. Yeah, Aphro is kind of... I don't know, Aphro is kind of weird in that sense. Some are super aggressive, yeah. Because some people just run at you and use their sustain to win poke. And some just clear the wave and try to be a heal beats Aegis bot in late game. And just try to get there as soon as possible. Another thing I wanted to mention, another trend I've seen in solo lately, is not getting teleport, but getting sometimes beats. Most of the time it's gonna be blink thorns. You can get Sunder if you want to be aggressive, especially if you have a Nike or something in the enemy team, but that's more something the support would pick up. Maybe some anti-heal like Ankh could be usable, could be viable. What else can you build? I was thinking of another item, but I forgot right now. Yeah, I think another item that is really undervalued is, what's it called? It used to be Curse, but now it's not Curse anymore. It's the item that slows in AoE. The relic that slows in AoE. I'm sure somebody knows it. Horrific. There you go. I can't think of names right now. So Horrific, I think the issue with Horrific is that you can easily counter build it if you see the enemy has it, because you just pick a sprint and then they don't have anything anymore. But if you pick it second relic, where often people are already forced to go either relic second because they often need a blink on their support or they need something else. The 20% less damage doesn't get removed with sprint. That's also true. But I think if you're just picking it for the 20% less damage, then it's not really that valuable. I think the real value comes from almost guaranteed hitting everything on your mage and hunter and just doing insane damage that way. So you don't want to get Horrific first item, first relic, but getting it later in the game might be valuable. Although I think right now Blink Thorns is just too good to pass up. Because Blink allows you to engage any fight almost. Because then you still have your leap, your ult, whatever it is you need to get out if you don't win the fight. And Thorn just allows you to run at the enemy ADC and mid laner, to much of my frustration, without being able to do anything against it, basically. Because if you attack them too much, you're just gonna kill yourself. And if you don't attack them, it's... if you don't attack them, then you're just running away and you're not participating in a team fight. So the way they would counter it is... It's very difficult to do this in ranked, but in competitive, what you do is you mid ADC stay together and they peel for each other and they can kill the solo laner together. Because the one-on-one, they're never gonna win against the solo laner if he's not really far behind. So most of the times you're gonna get Blink Thorns, whereas you would get Blink first. Because Blink could be useful in lane, it could be useful in rotations. Thorns doesn't have that much value until you get to team fights, where at that point you would always be level 12 already. Teleport can be good if you... I think teleport is more of an early game relic, because it allows you to get to lane immediately after backing. So you won't miss any farm, whereas Blink and Thorns will both get you more value in the late game in team fights. Whereas one teleport in a team fight often won't make that much of a difference, compared to being able to Blink on the enemy backline and Thorns so the enemy can't really fight you 1v1. It's gonna be way more impactful. The only value you're gonna get is of teleport is getting to a Gold Fury and being able to win a fight there because you're a 4v5 because the enemy solo laner isn't there and you are. That's how you would utilize teleport to get some value for your team. Another important aspect of solo lane is proxying. So the wave, I'll do it on this side. The wave, this up until this point, this entire path takes 30 seconds for the minions, exactly. But if you, I'll leave this up so you can see it. But if you can kill the wave at this point, which is roughly half, so 15 seconds. How do I explain this? So, your enemy solo laner is new, and he has no idea what he's doing. He's just clearing the wave over here. The wave will meet every 30 seconds in the middle of the map, on any side of the map. Every 30 seconds the minions will clash. But if you are clearing the wave over here, I'll put it in light blue so you can see it. Boom. That means that by the time the second minion wave clashes, which would be over here, you have 45 seconds. This means that you have 45 seconds to do this camp, maybe do blue buff if it's up, maybe even go to mid camps, maybe even go gank mid lane. You have 45 seconds. Also, you can do speed if you are ahead, but speed is kind of risky because it's very deep in the enemy jungle. So you have 45 seconds of complete freedom where you can do whatever you want. You won't miss any farm, and often most people won't expect you to avoid that, especially in ranked, because people don't communicate and people don't listen to calls enough. So you have 45 seconds where you have a huge window to get a lead. Doing speed is risky and savage because most jungles will be max 10 seconds delayed on his jungle buff. He's good. Yes, you need to. This is something I will get to. You need to know where the enemy is if you are boxing and invading. But so you have 45 seconds to do whatever you want and to get a lead and get back to lane without even missing any minions. Whereas the enemy has to come in this scenario, the enemy would have to rotate all the way like this way, and you would rotate this way, which is shorter, and you're starting to clear the wave 15 seconds before him, so you're always going to out-rotate him. The issue I see why a lot of people proxy at the wrong times is that they see that they are out-clearing the enemy solo laner, so they just think, I'm gonna proxy, and there's nothing he can do against it. But the issue with proxying is, if you are proxying over here, in this example, you are deep in the enemy jungle, but in the enemy territory, because you are behind their blue buff. So it is quite easy for a mid laner who would be like over here to rotate and cut you off. If the jungler is at his speed, he can come over. If the solo laner is just in lane, he can come over. And there is nowhere for you to run to. And at that point, you're just dead. The solo laner alone can stop you. The mid laner or the jungler alone can stop you. But all three of them together are easily gonna kill you. Unless you're smart and got teleport glyph with a little ward placed. Little well placed vision shrine ward. Vision shard ward. You can do that, but then you're giving up your teleport for a proxy. And you're not getting anything of the proxy either. So that's also not a valuable trade-off. But if you know that even if your solo laner is there and the jungler is whatever at, I don't know, he's gonna gank duo, let's say, so he's over there. And you have duo lane over there. Perfect. So having these two people, the mid and solo, rotate over, they are often not gonna kill you. And what you can do in this situation is just run through here. Because after level 7, 8-ish, you're gonna be tanky enough to run through the tower and not really care. And at that point, the mid laner is gonna lose farm, you can run to your tower, you should be safe in most situations. Especially if you have the ward placed here, which most teams should have, so you can see them coming. And it should be called out. So at that point, you're just wasting time of the enemy mid laner. But if the jungler is at their speed buff, and he's also coming over, then it's gonna be very difficult for you to get out, because now there are 3 people on you. And they are gonna have some CC with the jungler and the solo laner, most likely. So they can almost always kill you. Unless you're gonna waste your teleport, I guess. Barely any jungler or solo laner got anything that can prevent him from teleporting. I don't think that's true. There are some junglers who can't, but any stun, any knock-up will prevent you. And the key to stopping the teleport is you time it so it stops them right before it would finish. Yeah, any hearts you see, exactly. So you would time it just before it would finish, so you waste 4 seconds of their teleport, and then you just stop it, and then you make them go through the entire teleport again. Another mechanic in solo lane, which is the same as an ADC pretty much, is freezing the wave. This is mainly a thing if you are ahead. So if you are ahead, the waves are clashing. You are gonna just stand near your wave and get any last hits. I'll do it in like bright blue, just so people can see. So you are gonna stand near your wave. So you're getting all the experience, all the gold. You're gonna last hit any minion. You're gonna wait as long as possible to kill them, so they can kill your minions. And the entire point of freezing the wave is you are ahead. You want to grow your lead as much as possible. And you don't want your enemy to get any farm at all. So what you do is you let the minions kill themselves or kill each other. They don't commit suicide, they kill each other. And you deny the enemy solo laner from coming closer. And in that situation, if they come closer because you are ahead, you can fight them and poke them out. And if they don't push up, then the minions are dying and they shouldn't be in range to get the experience. This is very difficult to deal with if you are behind. Most of the time you're gonna need a jungler to come over just so you can get some lane pressure as the guy who is behind. As blue in this situation, you need to be careful of this because you don't want to get ganked and lose your lead that way. Because if the waves are fighting and then you die in lane, then you're gonna also lose the entire minion wave. It's gonna get pushed into tower. Also, you don't want to freeze too much if your camps are still up, because then you could be pushing the wave under tower, and then you can go do your farm and then you can start freezing again. Because you want to get as much farm as possible in every situation. Rotations, I kind of covered it with proxying. If you are just in lane and you want to rotate, so you're over here and you're over here. So if you want to rotate, there's not much you can do because your rotation would take like 15 seconds, a little less, like 12 seconds, I think. So if you take 12 seconds to go to mid and 12 seconds to go back, that means you have 6 seconds exactly between each minion wave clashing. That is not even taking into account how long it takes for you to clear it. But a rotation can be worth it if you have a specific goal in mind and you know how you want to do it. So just rotating into middle because you feel like it often is gonna lose you farm and not really gain anything. But if you know the enemy mid laner is like a Discordia who doesn't have a great escape, her dashes, or her leap I guess technically, is very short and she just used beats and her ult is down. Maybe you wanna go behind, go kill the Discordia who is pushed up and not very smart, so you kill the Discordia. And then you go to gold, you get gold with your team. In this situation it might be worth it because you have a specific plan as to what you are gonna do. Ideally you would also have teleport in this situation because you wanna not be too far. Actually, you wouldn't go to gold with your team, you probably are gonna go back to lane, especially if the enemy solo lane is not rotating at all. Because then the gold tree is pretty secured on your side already. But if the enemy solo laner is rotating, then you are gonna want to go to gold to help. But you have a specific plan, you know what you're gonna do, you know how you're gonna achieve it. You're not just rotating to mid because why not? Maybe I'll get lucky, maybe I'll get a kill. So if you wanna rotate, if you are like roughly level 12 or higher, you can just start proxying and then going to mid from the blue buff side. As for ganks in solo, you're not really gonna have a lot of ganks, because most of the time you're gonna have physical protection against the enemy warrior and assassin, who are gonna be your main opponents, and the enemy jungler's time is gonna be better spent in duo and in mid. One, because Gold Fury is the most important objective early game, and two, the mid laner and ADC are more valuable targets, and they are more easily killed than the solo laner. So getting a solo lane kill is not as valuable in most situations. You can do it against some gods who want to get ahead and who need to get ahead in team fights, or who need to get ahead to be effective in team fights rather. I saw an example of this in SPL where game 1, I think this was yesterday actually, game 1, let me check because I might still have it open actually, because I was watching earlier. Yeah. So game 1, what was it? I think it was Nike who didn't get ganked at all. Oh no, this wasn't yesterday, this was like last week. But anyway, game 1, the solo laner was a Nike. Nike got ganked basically 0 times if I remember correctly. And game 2, it was, who was it? God damn it, why can't I remember? Oh yeah, game 2, it was King Arthur. And King Arthur, oh no, it was Cthulhu. Yeah. Cthulhu got ganked a few times, because the entire point of Cthulhu is you want to get ahead, you want to have a lot of health, you want to be unkillable. But if you are behind, you don't have a lot of health, you don't do a lot of damage. You're just gonna run on an ADC who is just gonna kill you. You're gonna have a bad time. So keep in mind who you are playing. Some gods are worth ganking in solo lane. Some gods are basically just a waste of time. It also depends on the rest of the comp, obviously. Because if you have a Hebo in the middle, you want to gank him. You want to shut him down, make sure he doesn't carry everyone. Anything else I should say? I was thinking of something earlier, and I'm kind of all over the place today. If you have any questions, by the way, feel free to type them in chat. There was, oh yeah, if you are, regarding builds, if you are ahead, you want to build more power items. Something like a Heartseeker is really good because it gives a lot of damage. If you build a Heartseeker and you are behind, you're just gonna die too quickly to get your damage off. If you wanna do some damage while being behind, you wanna build some hybrid item, like a Void Shield, maybe even a Shifter Shield if you want to. Shifter Shield is a bit underrated, I think, to be honest. But something like that will also help you survive. Whereas if you are behind and you build Heartseeker, you're just gonna die too quickly for it to be effective. Anything else? I mentioned counter building. There are no questions. Warding is something I often forget to mention. Warding in solo lane is kinda easy. You ward over here almost always. If you're against a Thor or a Rat, you wanna ward in the Fire Giant pit so you can see them ulting, because that's where they're gonna ult from the most. If it's against a normal jungler, you can use your ward over here, which I think is a good location because you're gonna see a lot of ganks coming from their ward. You don't really ward anywhere else. You could ward their blue buff if you want to get a timer. Same with the back camps if you want to get a timer for maybe a potential invade later. But those are dependent on the game and how it is going. It's not something you always want to do. You can't always just invade their buffs. Anything else? There are really no questions. I feel like today I've been the most unclear and all over the place I've been in any lesson. So I'm very surprised there are no questions. Because I keep remembering other things I have to talk about and then I am trying to explain everything. If there anything you want me to explain again, Moose, feel free to ask. Solo bad wall, I agree. I hate solo lanes because they keep running at me with Thorns and Blink. As a Cyrus and I can't do anything because if I attack them with Thorns I'm just gonna kill myself. It's terrible. Oh yeah, another item you should consider as a solo laner, or shouldn't consider because I'm an ADC player and I hate it when people build it, is Heart of the Nemean Lion. It used to be picked up on squishies to get the block stacks, but now that they changed it to provide block stacks per 120 protections you build, it's only useful on tanks. But in solo you can pretty easily still get 3 stacks and get value off it. And it does a lot of damage mitigation. It's decent against hunters, but the main strength is against assassins who wanna get one big Hydra's auto attack off and do a lot of damage with that one. But if you block that one auto attack with Nemean, then you negate a lot of their damage. Or you can even negate multiple Hydra attacks if it's someone like, I don't know, like a Susano or a Tosca who weaves in abilities depending on what build he goes. But blocking Hydra attacks is very valuable. Imagine being a hunter and you shoot a million hours of blood and she just blocks every single one. Dude, it's so sad, honestly. I like the new Nemean Lion change though, because I hated the old because there wasn't really any counterplay. But now it's more situational, and there's not no counterplay because there are things you can do against them. So I think it's a good change. But anyway, not really the point. Are there any questions, Moose? I feel like you're very confused right now. I am recording, so if you have questions, you can always rewatch later and ask me. My main problem is more that I don't really have a feel for the role. I would say that comes, I mean, it's just practice, probably, right? And just, I think another big thing of improving is considering like what you did wrong and how you can do better next time. Just because I feel like I'm not saying anyone here does this because I don't know. I feel like a lot of people just blame things outside of their control so they don't have to face that they did something wrong, which I think hinders a lot of people, hinders their improvement. So I think having a good mindset is also something that's important. I feel like the other worlds are more straightforward. Yeah. I think a misconception in solo is that it's similar to a 1v1 in ADC. Whereas in solo you're more farming and you want to get up to late game and be a bully late game to the squishies. And you don't need to kill somebody in solo to make it worth it. If you are fighting the enemy solo layer and you poke them out, you force them back so they can't play aggressive or they even have to back, that's already a victory. Even if you don't get the kill, you can push some waves in the tower. Maybe invade the back camps or invade their blue buff. Get a least in that sense. But you don't need to kill them for it to be worth it. Of course, it's nice to kill them, but not necessary. And I didn't answer your question of when you should go. Oh no, I did answer your question of when you should do totem. Try to poke it, don't give up wave pressure. Wave over totem. That's the gist of it. Your highest priority is the wave, then it's blue buff, then it's totem. So, there you go. Also ignore people spamming you for your totem, because you need to listen, or you need to focus on your own farm before getting totem. How to play solo when there's a Discordia on the other team. Make sure your hunter feeds so you don't get wrecked by Discordia passive. Easy. But seriously, if you're gonna have a tougher time boxing them, so you just need to focus more on your farm, I would say, and not. You need to be aware that they have the extra power, and they're just gonna hit harder in most situations, harder than you would expect. So you need to focus more on your farm and not being behind, because if you can go even with them in a way, that's already a victory. And then you can go into late game even. Whereas part of the balance of Discordia is her passive, so if you can negate that part, it's almost as if she doesn't have a passive, so she's not as strong anymore. If that makes sense. Anything else? Everybody's leaving. Feels Batman. I think I've said everything I wanted to say. I think you covered pretty much everything that I didn't learn from Fine OK. Dude, I'm literally better than Fine OK. What do you mean? I'm actually not, I hate solo lane, but whatever. Alright, I'll stop the recording here then.